Dub Nation. After the final buzzer. This is where you come for instant post-game reaction.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is Dub's OT.
Can't wait.
With John Dickinson.
Hey, JD, what you up to, sugar? Long time no talk to.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
Just outside a minute to go. They'll play out this possession defensively. 7-point game. Schrader driving. Gives it up the field. Oh, my goodness. The facial of Hartenstein.
Punctuation mark.
Yeah, what a night. What an exclamation point on the night from Gary Payton II as we welcome you in. Warriors win. That's right. Warriors win. You hear me correctly. Over the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's right, the team that came in with the best record in the NBA. And it's not the first time the Warriors have beaten the Thunder this season, but that was way back in November when the Warriors were extremely hot to begin the year, 8-2 through 10 games after that victory back on November the 10th in OKC. And, of course, the Warriors have been struggling mightily after the 12-3 start and down Draymond Green, down Jonathan Kuminga in this one, but the Warriors with just a spirited effort tonight after the first quarter. They found themselves down 14 after one, and they rally to get the game tied going to the fourth quarter, and the Warriors end up winning each of the final three quarters of this game after trailing by 14 at the end of the first quarter, 28-24 in the second, 36-26 in the third, and then the game was tied going to the fourth. Warriors 32-25 in the fourth. Many different contributors, and I think the big overarching takeaway for this one is a lot of the guys that had the spirited effort and the big-time impact on this game were guys who have been in the trade rumors and guys who have been in many ways kind of cast aside. And look, we do it on this show because that's the nature of the business, and fans do it because they're frustrated and want to see the team improve. But a lot of guys who have been either throw-ins or throwaways in terms of players that potentially might be going in a deal came up huge for the Warriors in this game. And right there at the forefront of it is Andrew Wiggins with 27 points on 10 of 17 shooting. It was an aggressive Andrew Wiggins on a night where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander goes for 52. Andrew Wiggins at different points in this game was going toe-to-toe back and forth with SGA, finishing with 27. Stephen Curry with some big fourth quarter moments and shot making in this one, but it was Gary Payton II's best scoring game of the season, ends up with 15. The punctuation dunk that we play here coming in, it's Kevon Looney with probably his best and most productive game of the season. How about 18 points for Kevon Looney? There's nights where Looney rebounds. There's nights where Looney has assist totals. How about Kevon Looney, 8 of 9 at the free throw line tonight for 18 points and 4 block shots. He set the tone defensively, I thought, in a big-time way for the Warriors, who were looking for center production in this game. And Steve Kerr able to go to Old Faithful in Kevon Looney, and he wound up being the best center the Warriors had on the court tonight, even on a night where they gave Quentin Post the opportunity to get the nod and make the start for the first time in his young NBA career. Trace Jackson Davis wasn't going to be a TJD game against OKC, but Kyle Anderson was the next best center for the Warriors tonight. Kyle Anderson dusted off. Add him to the list of the guys who have been cast off, cast aside, throw away, throw in, put them in a deal. Got to find a way to get them out of here to get somebody else on this Warriors roster that can potentially help improve it. And while in the big picture, tonight may not change that conversation at all, and we can get into the level that maybe it does or doesn't. But another player, Kevon Looney, somebody salary filler in any kind of deal. GP2, salary filler, expiring contract in any kind of deal. You look at Andrew Wiggins, the big money ticket in terms of who would have to go in any kind of deal that the Warriors do for another player that is of significance. And so those guys specifically in this one, letting everybody know that they can still help this team win, and not only help this team win, but help this team win on a night where they're shorthanded and they get down and they're playing the best team in the NBA, as Oklahoma City ends up losing to fall to 37-9 here on the season and walk out of Chase Center. Dennis Schroeder, solid and steady, some good, some bad. Brandon Pajemski continues his quality play for the Warriors, going back to the last couple of games before the abdominal injury and the games since returning from the abdominal injury. 18 points in this game for Brandon Pajemski. He's not maybe somebody that's been cast aside or thrown in to any of the recent trade deals, but you look at what Pajemski was able to do tonight, and he was, that connector that the Warriors like for him to be, and had some shot making. Another story of the night for the Warriors. Role players just making shots. Kyle Anderson, a big turnaround jumper. Pajemski hit a big jumper. The Warriors got Wiggins. I mean, they just got big make after big make after big make. Some of Kevon Looney's free throws, I think you could put into that category as well. But the Warriors made enough shots once they got the lead to stem the tide. You knew Oklahoma City was going to be coming after them. So 808 KNBR, as we welcome you in here, it's Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. Cheers to Mike and to Julia and the crowd that is filing in here at Harmonic in Thrive City. Stop by, say hi if you're in the area, as always, even if that's not tonight. If you're listening or watching tonight, you're coming to a game on Friday. We're out here after every Warriors game with Dubs OT from Harmonic in Thrive City. 808 KNBR, the number to give us a call or shoot us a text. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is open as well. And as always, we love everyone in the YouTube chat. A lot of our regulars, Rebel to Sounds and Max Lopez and Estimated Eyes, Rockin' New Era 84, Lance Malone, a lot of people, FL Dubs fan, a lot of people chiming in here early as this game went on and on. Late game, deep into the night, almost pushing the 10 o'clock hour for a 7 o'clock start. But it turns out to be on a night where it looked like it might be an game with the Warriors down and having so many ugly defeats over the last couple of weeks. The Sacramento game at home early January, the game against the Celtics back on the 20th on the MLK holiday, Warriors losing by 30 and 40 in those games respectively. And you thought, wow, is this one going to get out of hand as you look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander go for 21. He outscored the Warriors on his own in the first quarter of the game. The Warriors had 20, OKC had 34, SGA had 21 in the first quarter. And this was one of those games where really the Warriors get credit for playing quality defense on a night where SGA ends up with 52, because other than Jalen Williams in the fourth quarter and Isaiah Joe throughout the course of the game, nobody was really getting anything efficiently. And even Jalen Williams was I think right around the 13, 15 point mark going into the fourth quarter, but it was 7 of 17, 7 of 18 type shooting. And I think some of the isolation of Shai doing his thing and getting his, but others were not in any kind of rhythm, and the Warriors did a pretty good job against some of the others tonight. Even Jalen Williams, who had a big fourth quarter and ended up with 26, but it was a heavy-duty fourth quarter for him, and everybody else, again, other than Isaiah Joe, didn't really shoot it well. Only 9 3-point makes for Oklahoma City. The Warriors ended up with 13. Not their best game by any stretch of the imagination, but they win a game in the 3-point margin, plus 12, that they win on the scoreboard, plus 7. So really nice win for the Warriors. Maybe the win of the season, I think, for Golden State as they improve to 24 and 23. Does it change anything, though, as it relates to the trade deadline? It may come off as a little bit heartless to say it, but I don't think it does. I think the Warriors still need to be looking to add and augment this roster, whether that ultimately is Jimmy Butler, whether that ultimately is Nikola Vucevic. I'm just going to say straight up, I would not trade Andrew Wiggins for Zach LaVine. That was a name that has popped up here within the last 24 to 36 hours. I said this in the offseason, in the summer. I would have traded Chris Paul's expiring contract plus other stuff for Zach LaVine. You don't trade Andrew Wiggins for Zach LaVine. You don't. Like that. That's a losing move. That's a move if you want to be a team that's got offense and less defense and poorer wing play, because Zach LaVine's a two-guard and not a wing player, and then you essentially have no threes on your roster at that point, other than maybe Moses Moody. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm just not. I'm out on the LaVine thing. And again, we spent a good chunk of the show last night in the discussion as it related to what moves would you potentially look to make. And I think the Warriors are obviously still in on Jimmy Butler to a certain extent, trying to figure out whether that makes sense. But tonight's one of those nights that makes you, in some ways, at least take another real close look at everything before you make sure that you are going to make the move that you think you're going to want to make. And so, 808 KNBR, does tonight change anything as it relates to where this Warriors team is at with the trade deadline now a week away? And the Warriors are going to play Phoenix on Friday. They get the back-to-back wins tonight to move to one game over. They play Orlando on Monday after having the weekend off. And then it's a big-time road trip, which is going to begin in Salt Lake City before the trade deadline, with the Warriors going from Salt Lake City to L.A., where they will face the Lakers a week from tomorrow on trade deadline day. And look, we've read reports and accounts day to day. The reason I bring it up as it relates to the Warriors, I mean, they seemingly are evaluating this thing day to day, where we've had the conversations, and we bring in Kyle Haar here in our San Francisco studios. Kyle, we've had the conversations where it almost feels night to night. If the Warriors lose and lose ugly, it kind of shifts to what's the point of any of this? They shouldn't give up anything to try and salvage this season. And then there are other nights when they get contributions, rare as they are to have as many as they did, from so many different players that just happen to be all the guys basically in the rumors to be headed elsewhere. The nights that have been more like this, it's been, well, should the Warriors stand pat only 2.5 out of X or Y, 6, 7, 5, whatever it is. I'm not even actually looking at the standings yet. But, Kyle, I'll ask you, and tonight, by the way, is going to be a Greg Silver night here on Dubs OT. Greg's going to come in and jump in coming up here in about 15 minutes or so, as maybe not quite 15, but we'll get Greg in for the second segment of the program. We'll get into the YouTube chat. We'll get into the Golden State Lumber and Boom Materials text line. But our guy Kyle Haar in studio with Overnight Dave. And Kyle, I got to ask you, man, like, how do you reconcile everything as far as, hey, great win, but, I mean, this team's still got to be looking to be aggressive, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, they still have to continue to look aggressive, but I'm still on that. You got to take it game by game. Maybe if they get 2 games over, that's a for sure put your chips in. But I do think it's kind of comical that the 2 guys we talked about who have expiring contracts, and Gary Payton and Kevon Looney, definitely played their most impactful games of the season, and both of them should receive game balls.
And Wiggins. Wiggins was awesome. I mean, Wiggins has to go in any deal of consequence for a higher salaried player. It's really the only way the Warriors can do it. And so it was those 3. Basically, I was joking with somebody via text. I was joking, one last hurrah for Looney at one point. I joked, one last hurrah for Wiggins, one last hurrah for GP2 at some point. So, yeah, great nights for all of them, regardless of what winds up happening. But I don't know, man. Like, I'm not doing when you say push your chips in, Kyle, would you? How can you trade Wiggins for anybody other than Jimmy Butler at this point? Like, I know. Like, to me, I think everybody other than Jimmy Butler among names that have been mentioned should be off limits as it relates to Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on Zach LaVine. I would not give up Andrew Wiggins for Zach LaVine. Like, it has to be GP2 and Looney and maybe another expiring contract plus a pick. But I think Zach LaVine would be a downgrade. Jimmy Butler would be an upgrade over Andrew Wiggins. So I think that's the only logical trade if you were to trade Andrew Wiggins.
Right. I think that's – well, this LaVine thing kind of popped up today with Anthony Slater, what he wrote in The Athletic, that LaVine is almost viewed as a safer bet option if the Warriors look to add. And I don't know. To me, you're taking away a two-way player for a guy who, as good as LaVine has been, and as much as I like his offensive game, again, I would have brought LaVine in for Chris Paul's expiring contract in a heartbeat. But I would not move off of Andrew Wiggins in an attempt to bring in Zach LaVine. To me, then he's a chucker. Like, as efficient and good as he's been, he's a chucker, and I'm not sure if LaVine's even a winning player at this point in his NBA career, and he's starting to get up there a little bit. So that's a move I would not make. And the thing that the prevailing thought on that for me just kept being, why would you set it up to where you end up with LaVine and Steph, LaVine, and Kuminga, as opposed to Steph LaVine and Wiggins could do something. Obviously, you can't make that meet. That's something you would want. Steph, LaVine, and Kuminga trying to learn how to play the three. That ain't it. That ain't it in terms of a smaller level move. I do think Vucevic could be in the mix, regardless. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's get to the phones and get it rolling here with Mark in San Francisco here on the Sports Leader Dubs OT. What's going on, Mark?
Oh, not much. Great win tonight. And
great win.
Great win. And I wanted to point out, if you look at the league, Memphis, Oklahoma City, and Houston are all young teams, and they have all their draft capital. So the Warriors have a lot of young players, and I think they need to keep them. So we're kind of stuck in a position where maybe if we make a trade, is it going to improve our team that much more? I don't know, but we got to watch, keeping our young players and our draft capital, because those three teams, they've got all that. They're young, athletic, and they're going to be a problem for going forward here. So Warriors are kind of in a tough situation, but I do like our young players, and maybe we just stand pat, things come together. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Tonight's one of those nights that makes you wonder. I don't think the Warriors are giving up any of the young players. I think Kuminga's been off the board here, Mark, for a few weeks, even since before he got injured. I think Podziemski's value went down up until the last few games before he got hurt. He's played pretty well since coming back. Moody tends to be up and down. Everybody's frustrated when he's not playing. Why is he not playing more? And then, he's played pretty well here the last week and a half. It's been kind of an up and down thing. So those three in particular, Mark, I don't think they are going anywhere. The new guys that are getting opportunities, Guy Santos and Quentin Post, are actually helping them win games here during this most recent stretch. So I don't think they're going anywhere. Again, I think the question is, do you move some of the veterans and or expiring contracts in an attempt to make a more smaller move on the margins to improve the depth, or maybe add a big man that can shoot, and just try to give this thing a little bit of a nudge as you continue to evaluate? That's the one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, and we were just talking about it, is do you do Wiggins in a deal for Jimmy Butler, if it could be just Wiggins basically, and for Jimmy Butler and a couple of expiring older players, Looney, GP2 and the like. Tonight's one of those nights, though, Mark, that makes you even wonder about that level of move because of how well those three played and impacted winning collectively.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what if they're going to be able to do anything. But I do like our young players, and they've really added a lot of, energy to the team, and it's fun to watch these young guys grow up. They're really getting good. Brzezinski's getting good. I mean, a lot of these young guys like Moody, they've got a big upside, and I'm excited about them. I really am.
Yep. Appreciate the call, Mark. Thank you. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's get Javier next in Marin on Dubs OT with JD here on the Sports Leader.
How you doing, John?
I'm doing well, my man. How you been?
I'm good. So my question is that to me tonight is a microcosm of Wiggins' career with the Warriors and the fact that he has the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. To me, you take the leverage that you have from tonight of him playing well and use it in a deal to just kind of make the move finally instead of just holding pat the whole time.
So you would make the move on Wiggins, you say, Javier?
Yeah, I mean, he's so inconsistent. You can't count on him from a nightly basis because we won tonight against Oklahoma City. We could turn around and lose by 30 tomorrow. It's just he's so up and down throughout his career that you just can't count on him anymore.
Yeah, it's tough as a when you're looking at him as an extra player, as a depth piece. I think you really like it because nights like tonight are a little bit of a surprise and almost found money, even though he's got them in him and they will come, but you don't know when you're going to get them. And anytime you start to expect it or really need it on a night in, night out basis, you're going to be disappointed. So I understand that sentiment. Javier, appreciate the call. 808 KNBR. When one person drops, you can jump in and join the conversation. Greg Silver's going to join us coming up here in about 10 minutes or so. We'll get into the YouTube chat. We got a busy night. We'll see if we can roll this thing into the 11 o'clock hour here, even on a school night at Harmonic in Thrive City with Mike and Julia at the controls behind the bar here tonight. Let's get to Danny next here. Danny in Vancouver. On a big win, Danny, tonight over the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I had a feeling this one might draw you out.
You know me so well, my friend. Always a pleasure, of course. You're like a national treasure, JD. It's great. Listen, I'm going to – I think this is a textbook example of recency bias. I think we're talking about Looney and GP, and I'm going to let others speculate about that. I thought they were the unsung heroes tonight, so I want to give them all their props, and I love them both. They're just magnificent. They're such pros. So that was a lot of fun. I think it was the second best game of the year after the Dallas game. It just was a lot of fun to watch. Just on a negative note, I would say that Hield is still killing me. He's just so hard to watch. I thought he almost lost the game for us in the first quarter. He was so bad. I'm curious what you thought. I mean, I thought if a couple more shots, Oklahoma, we could have been buried in the first quarter, and he was just so bad. And the other thing I was going to say is it drove me crazy how many calls. I know Shea took 100 shots, but I don't understand how anyone can go to the line 21 times. I mean, I just put it – that's why I thought the Dallas game was better, JD, because there were so many fouls on Shea, and he was going to the line every other sequence, and it really took away a little bit. But just not to be negative, it was a fantastic game, fantastic win. I wish we'd seen this about 10 games ago, but we'll see. And I think you're right. I think we have to be a little dispassionate and look at and saying, okay, maybe we'll have to move some of these vets, but I'm telling you, I'm loving them tonight. Thanks so much, JD. Have a good night.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'll get to Buddy Hield first. Yeah, Buddy Hield, I was having a conversation with colleague Tim Kawakami at halftime about a little Twitter exchange that we had. Buddy was not hitting shots, and the length of Oklahoma City was really bothering him, and he was unplayable in my mind. And we had a little chat about it. TK now the SF Standard, by the way, and so just the fact that, like, what are they going to do with him? He's got 3 more years on his deal with a player option, and the third year after this year, basically a 3-year deal with a player option for a 4th year. If Buddy Hield wants to exercise it, it's just when he, I don't remember him being even this bad for as long as he's been, even watching him play in Sacramento. He did impact the game positively in the third quarter, though. He had 5 points and 3 assists in about the first 4 minutes of the third quarter and really helped spark the Warriors' continued comeback in that third quarter. Warriors worked it from down 14 to close. OKC pushed it back up. I think the Warriors got it to 5 in the second quarter. Thunder pushed it back up to 10. They're closing the quarter. And Buddy Hield came out, and I asked Kerr going to start him. He went with Looney over Quentin Post as far as the bigs. And then Buddy Hield put a positive imprint on the game in the third quarter. So credit to him for that. Big picture, dispassionate view in terms of, unemotional lens on Buddy Hield. I think right now he's got to play less and less. And as it relates to the veteran players, as much as Steve Kerr, and that was the other part I wanted to hit on, as much as Steve Kerr loves Kevon Looney and loves GP2, those are two guys that I know for a fact Steve Kerr went to bat for the Warriors keeping in the offseason, because the Warriors could have done salary dump type moves with GP2. They could have just non-guaranteed Looney. I think he ends up making $8 million. They could have guaranteed the first 3 and he become a free agent. And basically they could have let him go. They could have let him go and then tried to sign him for the minimum and basically tried to play him into, instead of $8 million, you're only going to make 4, a 50% pay cut at that point. And Steve, for my understanding, really went to bat for keeping both of those guys around because of the leadership, because of what they've meant, in the locker room and what they've meant, individually and collectively with the 2022 team to championship runs and just their wisdom and IQ and vibes and all of those different things. So as much as it would be, I think, incredibly difficult for the Warriors to part, and most difficult probably for Steve Kerr, the one thing the Warriors cannot do in my mind is let the trade deadline pass with just letting those contracts expire and letting those contracts not have the potential to be used to bring other players in for next year. So I think that's where it gets difficult, because you're looking at the bigger moves that can be made. And again, I think you have to look at all the bigger moves first, because that's where you're going to give up the most of the rest of your roster for. And as you work your way down into smaller moves, that's where some of these other guys potentially become a little bit more expendable. And so I do think the Warriors, as great as tonight was, have to take a real hard and firm and unemotional look at moving guys who have been, championship role players, guys who have the champion's blood in them. And Looney, who's helped the Warriors to a couple and been a part of another finals team, and GP2, who was a big part of the 2022 story, a big part of tonight's story. Both of those guys, along with Andrew Wiggins, and how about GP2 just throwing it down at the end there, the exclamation point on this victory, as the Warriors take 2 of 3 in the season series against Oklahoma City. I know Dallas, I think, has beaten the Thunder 3 times of their 8 losses coming into tonight. The Warriors now have 2. So Dallas and the Warriors have beaten the Thunder 5 of their now 9 total losses on the season. Go figure. Dallas, obviously the team that knocked him out in the playoffs a year ago on their way to the NBA Finals. But the Warriors have beaten them with the lesser version of themselves here tonight, and beat them with what at least to this point has been the best version of the Warriors, 8-2 on the way to that 12-3 start to begin the season before everything kind of fell apart. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. How does tonight change the calculus, if at all, for you as to what the Warriors do at the trade deadline, which is now a week away? The Warriors are back at a game over 500. We'll get into the YouTube chat. We'll get to the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. And we will be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the great Greg Silver on the other side here. Dubs OT with JD as the Warriors win it 116-109 over the Thunder here on the Sports Leader.
Dub Nation, this is the real and inside story on Warriors basketball. Dubs OT with John Dickinson continues. Streaming live at twitch.tv/thesportsleader.
3-point game, inside 2 to play. Curry, deep three, hit it! Steph does it again!
You cannot go under no matter how far out you are, and the Thunder, you made a pay.
Elite clutch shot making for the Golden State Warriors. Part of the story tonight from Steph Curry, part of the story tonight from others, whether it's Kevon Looney at the free throw line, whether it's Kyle Anderson hitting turnaround jumpers, Brandon Pajemski with a big one, Andrew Wiggins all over the place, and a big game from Gary Payton II, who made all of his free throws as well in this one, 5 for 5. Warriors get the win, 116-109. We're back here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City as the Warriors make it 2 in a row and take the season series against OKC. These two teams only playing 3 times in the regular season, but the Warriors able to take 2 of 3 with the victory back on November the 10th and the victory tonight. And so the Warriors getting a lot of key contributions from players who have been in the rumor mill to earn themselves one of the best wins of the season. So let's bring in our guy Greg Silver here on Dubs OT. What's going on, brother? Good to have you along for the ride here tonight, at least for a few minutes. But that was a hell of a win and a hell of a surprise, given the state of the Warriors here over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, when we arranged me to come on for a little segment, I was not expecting to be talking about a 7-point win, much less so after they had the first quarter in which Shai Gilgeous-Alexander outscored the entire team by a point. But here we are, and look, I got to be fair, and the first thing I'll say is this. After that Memphis game where they lost by 50 and Dennis Schroeder was new to the team, I thought that was one of the worst efforts I'd seen in a decade. I also need to acknowledge that tonight, these guys played their asses off. That was an amazing effort. I thought win or lose in the middle of the fourth quarter, that was a really impressive showing from the Warriors. And it doesn't change necessarily everything, and we can get into the larger implications of it all. But it is a further reminder of 2 things. Number one, do not ever, 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 ever take Steph Curry for granted. And maybe, perhaps that should be a message to the decision makers as well. Number 2, Looney is life.
Yeah, Looney was awesome tonight. And at one point, I was mentioning this in the end of the last segment. I was going back and forth via text with somebody, and it felt in a weird way, almost like you could make the case it was Wiggins' last hurrah, Looney's last hurrah, and maybe GP2's last hurrah, because those are the guys that at least over the last 24 to 48 hours have been most prominently mentioned in the trade rumors and reports. Looney was awesome, and the Warriors were looking for quality center play. And I know you're fond of Kevon Looney. I'm fond of Kevon Looney as well, and the things that he brings to the table. When the Warriors truly need a big center game from, against a good team, it's always him, right? Like, we can talk about Quentin Post here and TJD there, and Draymond's obviously going to play some fight, but Looney is the guy who consistently, and it hit me even in the second quarter tonight, where the Thunder are kind of on cruise control, doing what they've done to the rest of the league. The Warriors look, frankly, overmatched, based on this version of their team for this year versus the Thunder. And then Looney gets thrown in the game, and Looney was one of the few players at that point in the game where you looked at it and was like, oh, Looney's like actually very comfortable in this game against this extremely talented championship caliber young and up and coming squad. And not only is he comfortable, but he raised his game to their level based on the skills that he individually possesses, which, if you followed this Warriors team during the championship era, I mean, that has just been something that, whether it's been against Sacramento in that playoff series 2 years ago that the Warriors won, where he was their second best player, or Memphis and Dallas during the finals run. I mean, Kevon Looney, the Rockets in the Harden, Chris Paul era, he always tends to rise to the occasion against the best of the best.
He absolutely does, and it's something that we've not always seen from other players on this roster. We haven't always seen that from Andrew Wiggins. I know there was the 2022 championship run, and he was stellar throughout that. But we haven't seen Andrew Wiggins be consistently the number 2 guy that he frankly has needed to be in this entire time where Jonathan Kuminga's been out, when Draymond Green has been out. I think he's had a really solid year overall. Last year, obviously much different, and he was dealing with a lot off the court. But Andrew Wiggins tonight, not only was he really good and the stats showed for it, but it seemed like Wiggins, and really everybody, but led by Wiggins, was making the shots that needed to be made down the stretch. Because, I mean, look, everybody in the YouTube chat, a lot of people listening right now, Kyle for sure, having run a bunch of these shows now, we were all thinking it when they got a 5-point lead late in the game, even got up to 7. Like, okay, well, the Warriors don't exactly do this closing thing very well. OKC, not to mention, had made life so difficult for Steph Curry because they got 3 guys that they can throw at him and just stick it with him and man him the whole time. And Lou Dort is a pain in the butt defender to deal with. He's a really, really good player for OKC. And so Wiggins answered the bell. You had Kyle Anderson with a turnaround jumper. That was his only field goal of the night. I thought this was vintage in a lot of ways in terms of the second half adjustments, vintage in terms of can't shut the door on the Warriors, and really vintage in terms of Steve Kerr pushing all the right buttons and figuring out when to move away from people at the right time, like Quentin Post, who he started experimentally, and when to put people back in the game. Dennis Schroeder, by the way, not going to tell from the box score, and this is exactly what Steph Curry said in his postgame. Schroeder's stats were fine, but that was a really fantastic Dennis Schroeder game in terms of steadiness on the offense, making use of the pick and roll, general facilitating. I thought was instrumental in creating decent looks, and that is how the Warriors got back into this game. It was led by their defense. It was led by getting some second chances. But on top of that, you got to get good looks on offense. And there's all this talk about, the Warriors don't shoot a high percentage and they don't make that many layups. They don't get a lot of good looks when they're forcing shots up inside either. So all in all, just it was a lot of poise. They played their face off, and the effort was on full display. I mean, I felt like everyone embodied a little Guy Santos and Juan Toscano Anderson, or insert favorite overachieving Warrior of this era.
Yeah, and Guy Santos, I think, deserves a nod as well, because he continues to, whether it's nights he's making shots or nights that he's just out there hustling around, but his energy, I do think, is contagious. I think Quentin Post has been, less so tonight. He gets an opportunity to start. Bad matchup for him. Bad matchup for TJD, who didn't even see the floor for the Warriors. And this one, that's all fine. But to your point, Steve really did push a lot of the right buttons in this one, and the Warriors able to prevail and earn themselves a victory, 116-109. All right, so big picture, does any of it matter? Because I mean, we've seen this team, they haven't had a game like this, a soul-lifting type of a game in a while. I think maybe the win at Minnesota, the last one, but that was on the heels of a loss in Toronto. I think that game would, but really, I think you almost have to go back to the 12-3 start to have games that fit in the category like tonight, whether it was in OKC in November or Boston in November, the Dallas game in November when the Warriors came back and beat Klay Thompson and the Mavs. They're down the stretch. What should tonight change anything? Does tonight change anything for you as it relates to how aggressive the Warriors should or shouldn't be at the trade deadline, which is now a week away as of tomorrow?
I don't think it changes much for me in terms of what I said earlier today with Greg Papa, and that was essentially they don't need to go reckless and they don't need to just trade every possible asset that they have. I'm actually not super into the Jimmy Butler thing. I'm more into getting a stretch five of some sort. I think Miles Turner is the ideal candidate, right? Someone who can't seem to work out an extension with this team. He's been in trade rumors for like 7 consecutive years out there in Indiana. We don't know what's going to happen to him, but I don't know. Is it a Vucevic? Quentin Post is a nice player and he's got the skill set for it, but we saw for reasons like tonight, like he's not going to give you the meaningful minutes, especially defensively, in the big matchups like this, and that's totally fine. He was the 52nd pick of the draft, and he's been playing in Santa Cruz. I'm not knocking the kid whatsoever. What I am saying is you got to go and get somebody or do something to make yourself competitive, JD, because, yeah, is this team a contender? Are they a move away from a contender? Are they a stretch 5 away from being a contender? No, but also, you said it when I came on. So the Thunder lost 2 of 3 to the Warriors. The Thunder have lost 9 games on the year. They're the heavy favorite to come out of the Western Conference. They are well ahead of schedule on their rebuild. Sam Presti has like 723 draft picks in this decade. They're a force. And Chet Holmgren's coming back, by the way. That said, you play against the team in the Thunder in a playoff series and you're able to get in there. You don't think it's going to be a little bit of a pain to have to deal with an underdog Steph Curry with nothing to lose and a little bit of support? I mean, I'm just saying, if they played the Thunder in the playoffs, they wouldn't win the series. That's not what I'm getting at all. The larger point is this whole purpose from what Steph has said after that Timberwolves win, kind of shutting down the comments of waving the white flag, is anyone who thinks I'm okay being on an average basketball team is insane. If the whole purpose of this is to compete, then you do something at the trade deadline to be able to compete. That is why you play the games. That is why sports exist. I almost referenced the Detroit Tigers earlier today when we were talking a little baseball. They finished 31-11 to get a spot in the wild card. That wasn't supposed to be a playoff team. You have one Steph Curry. You will only have one Steph Curry. And when he is gone, there is going to be a rebuild of some sort or another. So regardless of whether it's a short rebuild, long rebuild, a 26-win team rebuild, or a 38-win team rebuild, you got to make use of the greatest player you've ever had in franchise history. And tonight is just a reaffirmation of exactly that sentiment.
No doubt. I think that's extremely well said. And look, I mean, I think at times the Warriors have used the fact that they're still in the race despite being so mid. You know, the race for even, say, the 5 seed, they're only 3 games back of that. They've used that as an excuse to not be active, when I think it should be something that pushes them toward being active, even on the margins, because I think the guys who do remain on this roster beyond next Thursday, after the trade deadline, they could use that infusion as they are at the infancy of a road trip leading up to the All-Star break, and a road-heavy post-All-Star break portion of the schedule. The Warriors have the 6-game road trip right before. They've got a couple of big, long trips, one at the end of February, beginning of March, one at the end of March, beginning of April. Like, they've got 2 really long trips after, 3 really long trips if you also factor in the one that's going to start next week. An infusion of belief from the front office, even a small one, I think could go a long way toward continuing to have this team fight. It doesn't mean that guys who've been playing are not going to play, but augment the guys that are the keepers versus the guys who maybe are a little bit expendable, and use those to be able to add to the roster in a manner that infuses life. Take a night like tonight and don't sit on it until it withers away and you have your next disappointment or stretch of disappointments. Use it to ignite something. And it's not about contending again for an NBA championship. It's get yourself to that point where you can play a team like OKC in a first-round series, because the Warriors didn't even get a chance to do that last year. You know, get that will be a lot of fun in the final couple of weeks of April if it were to come to fruition, even if the Thunder prove themselves to be a team that is at the beginning of, you know, maybe whatever the Warriors had going for them 10 years ago. You know, we'll see. I'm not saying they're going to win 4 championships, but you know, this could be part of their journey, and part of their journey toward a title, whether it's this year or in the coming years, is trying to knock out Steph Curry in a similar way that the Warriors were trying to knock out other teams in their way as they rose to that top level.
Well, and here's the other thing, JD. By making a move of some, I don't want to say small move because that gets into the whole soft buy connotation and just making something work around the margins. Let's call it a medium move. Even making some kind of mid-level move, that doesn't prevent you from continuing to make moves in the offseason. Like, that's what's kind of gotten to me a little bit about this whole, they could make the bigger move in the offseason and just use this as a reset. You're like, what are we resetting when Steph Curry is 36 years old and Draymond Green is clearly got a bunch of wear and tear on his body and he's banged up? And again, that's not an excuse to go and be reckless. I'm not saying get rid of Kuminga and Podziemski. And by the way, Podziemski has been really balling since he came back from injury. So I'm happy to see that for his sake, because that's all you can really ask of Brandon Podziemski. The whole, he's going to be a future all-star. It's like, okay, maybe down the line, all you can ask for is continued growth after what he gave you last year. I mean, he was pick number 17, 19 pick, 17, whatever it was.
Yeah,
for crying out
19
loud.
for Podziemski, yeah. 19,
that's right. And then we had Jaime Jaquez at 18 and Jalen Hood-Schifino. That's my strong pull to get back on track for the Lakers. But I guess the point is, you can still make a move coming up here in the next week and do more in the offseason. But this notion that, they got some time to work with, they actually don't. They kind of have the opposite of that situation right now.
They do. And so I want to get your thoughts, because I gave my thoughts on it. GP2 and Looney specifically, you know how beloved those two are by Steve Kerr. I'm on record as saying I think at a minimum the Warriors cannot just let those two have their contracts expire without looking to use them to get a player that can be in the fold for next season. Tonight, I think everything has to be taken into account. It doesn't mean a night like tonight necessarily carries more weight than anything else we've seen to this point or anything we see between now and next Thursday. But where would you be? Where are you in terms of the value of having Looney and GP2 on this roster for the final 2.5 months of the season versus looking to add someone to the mix that can help this team not only maybe for the remainder of this year, but if they look to make a move in the offseason in terms of a trade, that player could be included, or even at this time next year because that player still has time remaining on a contract?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I'll start with Gary Payton II because I think that's an easier one for me to answer. Because of the injury history and the health concern and the size, I think that is one I'm much more willing to look to move off of and get something out of that contract. I love Gary Payton II. He's a really unique player. He will always be a meaningful part of the 2022 playoff run. But the reality is, last year, he couldn't stay on the court. When he is healthy, he's usually not going to give you more than 20 minutes. It's very unique that for his size, this is a 6'10" player in a 6'2" man's body. He can jump out the gym, but when Steph was hurt, how many ball handlers do they have on this team? Podziemski was out. That's a ball handler. Melton is traded away and was injured. That's a ball handler. You didn't have him. So then you got Schroeder. Buddy Hield isn't really a ball handler for this team. And Gary Payton II, who kind of should be a ball handler, isn't a ball handler. You're looking more at Draymond, who's been injured, and Kyle Anderson, who sometimes plays and sometimes doesn't. So I guess to say with Gary Payton II, that's one where I'm willing to look to move, and that's not because of no appreciation for him. Looney is a much tougher one, and taking the emotion out of Kevon Looney, I kind of teeter back and forth on this, right? Because Looney has had moments where Trace Jackson-Davis was much more playable. They love the TJD Draymond front court. TJD is more of a rim protector in terms of verticality. He is a lob threat, which Kevon Looney is not. That said, there is also the undeniable fact that Looney seems to always be ready when his number is called upon, regardless of if he's playing 0 minutes or 26. He has made the most big game impact, and tonight was another reminder of that. And I do think, I've always said this, the old phrase is, in order to be in the NBA, you have to be great at something. And I felt like Kevon Looney was kind of the rare exception to that earlier in his career, where you're like, well, I don't know what he really does great. He's good at a lot of different things. He actually became a great offensive rebounder and all-around rebounder, and he's become a really damn good defender. Like, he is a very high-level, high IQ defender. So when you don't have a Draymond Green out there, it's not like having Looney equals having a Draymond in a lot of the same ways, but it does give you this kind of defensive edge that wouldn't be there if you didn't have either one.
So keep Looney and trade GP2. Is that the What about Wiggins? Are you in or out? And are you in or out on Wiggins in a potential Jimmy Butler deal? Are you out on the Jimmy Butler deal completely? I know I understand from just a sheer value play why, if it could be Wiggins and expiring money only for Jimmy Butler, I mean, I kind of feel like you almost would have to do that if you were the Warriors, whereas a couple of months ago we're talking about Wiggins and Kuminga and maybe a future first and or other good players the Heat want to be part of their culture. And anytime the Heat would want one of your middling guys, I'd be a little reluctant because I would think that they view them as rotation players or guys who could develop, and you'd want to keep those guys. I know you've talked a lot about it with Papa. Where do you stand?
Well, we did a little bit of a hypothetical game where he's like, take away the salary and the CBA and all that stuff that no one really wants to get into the weeds on. Would you
Jimmy,
do Wiggins
it's Jimmy.
for Jimmy straight up? Papa said no. I said yes.
Whoa. He said no?
He said no, and I said yes.
Wow.
But I also acknowledged I didn't think Jimmy Butler, if we were looking at the larger picture of the trade scale, was the solution to all of it. And I do have to laugh because Andrew Wiggins kind of made me eat it tonight, and that's what's fun about talking about sports every single day. But the reason I was leaning toward Jimmy was I acknowledged a lot of the reasons why people would say no, and they don't want Jimmy Butler. I thought about what the Warriors have lacked in a lot of these clutch games. So was tonight technically a clutch game?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tonight was definitely. Yeah, tonight was. It got
they pulled away. Okay,
yeah.
So that's 29. That's 29 clutch games.
15 and 14.
And I thought about they play so many damn clutch games, whether it's against the 10-win Utah Jazz or 8-win Toronto Raptors or the 37-8 Oklahoma City Thunder. It just seems to kind of be the way they operate on a lot of these nights, except for the ugly home blowouts like Boston. But we're pushing that to the side tonight. So the reason I'm in on the Jimmy Butler is he's a winner. When he's motivated and angry, it works. And Wiggins, for as well as he has played, and for much as I like to stick up for Andrew Wiggins in a lot of regards, he hasn't necessarily been a takeover, make the big play in the clutch guy. Now, tonight he was getting the offensive rebound off the missed free throw in Minnesota. That was massive. But when it comes to making the big shot, I look at a Jimmy Butler and I kind of think, you're telling me if the Warriors can hang around in a play-in game or a playoff game that I wouldn't take that deal if it comes down to Jimmy and for Wiggins and expiring money? I got to say I'm pretty intrigued by it.
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, I would go Wiggins. I mean, I would go Jimmy over Wiggins if it was just in a vacuum, just those two as players. I think, the numbers are out there as far as Jimmy, but it's got to be a happy and motivated Jimmy, like you said. Can you get the contract situation organized in a manner to where it is going to be happy? Look, he has the ability to be a carrier. I think for the rest of this year and at least next year and maybe even a second year after next year, I think him and Steph being on that timeline with a lot to prove still would benefit the Warriors. I don't think Jimmy Butler alone, though, it's part of it. And look, you can do this in increments. There's nothing that says you have because you go get Jimmy Butler between now and next Thursday, you're done. You can go get Jimmy Butler, and then that means, okay, you had to give up Wiggins, unfortunately, to do it. We'll go get Jimmy Butler and, to that point, and the stretch big. You're going to keep Kuminga for the short term, but maybe Kuminga becomes somebody who's expendable for the right fit between now and next year's deadline, even if he's somebody that you re-signed to some kind of a big deal. It's going to change your overall roster. So I think getting the benefit of looking at what this roster would look like and what you would need to make it into a potential championship contender in the offseason, you're getting an added benefit if you do it by having those 2 months. And again, you got to know that you're going to have Jimmy beyond the next 2 months. That has to be baked into the deal. Otherwise, you don't and can't do the deal. But yeah, I think he's the only one at this point that Jimmy Butler that I would consider moving Wiggins for. Otherwise, hey, Wiggins is found. I get it. You don't get tonight's Wiggins every night, but Wiggins is a winning player if there are enough other good players around him, and he does a lot of things that the Warriors truly need. And he is exponentially ahead of, say, a Jonathan Kuminga. Like, do not, if you're the Warriors, make the mistake of thinking moving on from Wiggins, you can in some sense replace Wiggins with Kuminga, because they're not the same player. They don't play the same position. They don't have the same skill set. And again, I think that's a fool's errand. I don't think the Warriors would do Wiggins for LaVine. I really don't.
I wouldn't.
But hell no, I wouldn't have done it in the summer. I would no, absolutely not. That was a Chris Paul in the summer or bust type of a move. I would not be. I don't think LaVine's even a winning player, to be perfectly honest. Why is Chicago stink every year? Why is Chicago always having the same conversation every year, whether it's LaVine or DeRozan or Vucevic or any of the other guys they've had in? Like, every year they're 18-24 in the middle of the year. And it's like, what's going on with the Bulls? And they're like trying to get to 10th, but they're in 12th, and they're going to tear it down to the studs, but then they don't, and they sell out every night. Like, I'm not sure I would want any of the Bulls guys. I wouldn't be that high. Like, we just watched them a week ago. Like, I'm not sure I would be high on any of the Bulls. I see a lot of guys, frankly, who have been in a losing environment so long that I'm not sure that they can clean the stench of that losing environment off of them quickly enough to be able to be
don't be mean to Kyle Kuzma.
Impactful players. What about Kyle Kuzma?
I was like, come on, stop calling out Kyle Kuzma.
Oh yeah, well Kyle Kuzma stinks. I wouldn't want any part of Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma hasn't been good since he was on the freaking Lakers. Kyle Kuzma won a championship, got started to get paid, and has been a dog with fleas ever since. Kyle Kuzma stinks. Let me tell you something. Whoever gets Kyle Kuzma is getting worse at the trade deadline. That I can tell you right now. Anybody gets Kyle Kuzma, you're getting worse. All right, Greg, final thoughts. Anything you want to promote with Papa here the rest of the week? Kyle's losing it here in the studio. His laugh is making me laugh. Anything you want to hit on the way out the door tonight, Greg?
Oh, good question. I mean, coming off of that, it's tough to provide any sort of serious radio talk when you're giving me just comedy gold. But I don't know. I guess his final thoughts is, I'll say it again. They played their asses off. I mean, to get the win makes it that much better, but to just get back in that
Kuzma's got the bad dog in him. Kuzma doesn't have the dog, but he's got the dog in him. He's got the lazy dog in him. I guess Kuzma's the wrong dog.
I'll close by saying, as far as the Warriors, number one, with the whole Jimmy Butler thing, I know I laid out one scenario. It all comes down to what the asking price is. I'm not saying you go and get Jimmy Butler automatically. And another reason I'm going to bring that up is because I mentioned Gary Payton II as a contract I'm willing to get rid of. Wiggins is by far your best perimeter defender. If you lose Gary Payton II, you need someone to go and stop the ball. Hell, yeah, that was a great win by the Warriors. We also saw Shai Gilgeous-Alexander put up 52 points and 21 in the first quarter. Like, let's not pretend that this team.
Well, that was part of the secret sauce, though, tonight, right? Let him cook and try to take away others, maybe. I think a little bit.
The point being, a lot of these
better.
Western teams, you got star guards that you're going to have to worry about in some form.
100%.
Luka, Kyrie,
100%.
Anthony Edwards. So I guess that's what I'm getting at. And, like, you don't just give Wiggins away just for the sake of giving him away. If the asking price of Jimmy Butler gets so low, then maybe we're talking. That's my point. And then final thoughts, I would just say chat's awesome.
Yeah, the chat is awesome. And I got to get into – we're going to get into the chat coming up on the other side here a little bit. We've also got Fun with Numbers coming up. We've got Sounds of Dubs OT coming up. But make sure you're listening to Papa and Silver tomorrow here on the Sports Leader and every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. Greg, amazing stuff. Good to have you on the program tonight, and we will talk to you again here soon.
Hey, just call on me anytime. You know I love it.
All right, Greg Silver, appreciate you. Let's go ahead and take that time out. We'll come back. 808 KNBR if you want to jump in and join the conversation. Things are still going. The party's still rolling here at Harmonic and Thrive City. Warriors with one of their big wins of the year. We'll get to Sounds of Dubs OT on the other side. We'll also dive deeper into the YouTube chat as we get into the 11 o'clock hour here. KNBR 104.5 FM and 680 AM San Francisco, a Cumulus Media station and the Sports Leader. Oh, yeah. Well, Kyle Kuzma stinks.
Dubs OT with John Dickinson keeps rolling. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Pajemski going one-on-one against Joe, creates some space, launches, and hits with 1 on the shot clock.
And they're weathering the non-Curry minutes, and that they did their job. They did their job. 5-point lead. He's ready to check in.
Yeah, Warriors did weather the non-Curry minutes there in the fourth quarter. Brandon Pajemski, big shot. Kyle Anderson, big shot. Some nights teams just have all the answers, and the Warriors had a lot of the answers in this one down the stretch. Once they got the lead, they go on to win over the Thunder, 116-109. The final. We're back here with Dubs OT with JD from Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City as the Warriors improve now to 24-23 with the win. Still on the outside looking in as it relates to the play-in tournament, although they have tied Sacramento. For as well as Sacramento has played, the Warriors have tied Sacramento for 10th. The Kings, obviously, with the 2 head-to-head wins, have the lead for 10th. But Sacramento starting to struggle a little bit. Obviously, everything going on surrounding De'Aaron Fox. They've got a busy week in the lead up to the trade deadline. But the Kings, after they've been so hot, winning 9 of 10, have now dropped 3 of the last 4. And their next 2 games are against OKC and Minnesota on the road at the end of a long road trip. So the Warriors could potentially here, if they can continue to win over the next couple of games on the homestand, can get right back into that play-in tournament race. And the Warriors playing Phoenix next up as well. The Suns 24-22. They got beat tonight by Minnesota. Minnesota's starting to separate a little bit into that 7 spot in the Western Conference, but it's all really jumbled up. Just 3 games separating right now 5th and where the Warriors are at 11th as the first team on the outside looking in. Let's get back to the phones here and then more from the YouTube chat. We got a couple of people on the line here. Ken in Portland is next on Dubs OT here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Ken.
Hey, John. How you doing?
I'm doing well tonight, my friend. What do you got?
Well, a little follow-up on our conversation the other day about the middle path. I don't know if you remember it, but we were talking about how I am of the belief that the West is weird this year. Now, we've seen the Warriors can beat Oklahoma City. I don't think Oklahoma City really wants to meet the Warriors in a 7-game series. And aside from OKC, every other team in the West has major flaws. Major flaws. They all have weaknesses, obviously, including us. The hardest team for the Warriors to deal with if they're in a series in the West is the Lakers, in my opinion. The Lakers have the Warriors' number these last couple of years.
Yeah, with Davis, as long as Davis is playing. If Davis isn't playing, it changes. But, yeah, Davis has annihilated them the last couple of years.
The Lakers' Achilles heel. But so you get past all that. So my point there is this. If we've got this 2 or 3 year Steph window remaining, which I believe we do, it may very well be that this year is the most interesting possibility in the West. You know what I mean? Because some of these teams are kind of stacked, but just things aren't just right lined up this year because of the CBA and stuff, and they're going to retool. And I think a couple of those teams that have flaws this year are going to be a lot tougher next year. Now, maybe the Warriors will be too, but, this year there's possibilities. Anyway, but my point is, this year is kind of a golden opportunity. And I don't think they need to mortgage the future to be interesting this postseason. And we've talked about that. Now, just yesterday, we played Utah, and we saw Colin Sexton basically be the kind of person we thought Jordan Poole could be on the Warriors, only he does it for $12 million less a year. And he's available. Everybody, that is the rumor, is that Sexton is available. But no one really thinks he's worth a first. But they've also got John Collins, who no one thinks is worth a first.
Right.
And And I'm thinking to myself, well, what if we gave them one unprotected first? Like this year's first is probably a mid-first round pick. It's a pretty valuable pick with a lottery chance. And don't even put the lottery protections on it. Unprotected. And in exchange, get both of those guys. Because the Warriors roster, when you look at the Warriors roster, we are probably one of the 2 or 3 strongest teams from around spot number 7 to spot number 15 in the league. And we got Steph, but we're really, our hole is 1 through 6. We don't have enough good players 1 through 6.
And I'm not sure Sexton or Collins are quite good enough. Here's the question I'll have for you on that. I'm looking at John Collins right now. John Collins has he's making 26.5 this year. So that's the salary if you look to make a move for Collins that you're dealing with. And Colin Sexton is making 18.3. So that's what, 44.9 if you do the full. So it's basically $45 million between the two of them. You got to send $45 million out. The only way the Warriors can really do that is if Andrew Wiggins is going to be a part of that deal. I wouldn't be looking to trade Andrew Wiggins for either or both. I don't feel like either are quite good enough, and especially Collins. I'm not sure about Collins. Sexton, I kind of like. Like, could you get Sexton for a couple of could you get Sexton for Looney's expiring and GP and maybe a couple of second round picks? That would be something I'd be interested in if you flesh out some of the other options that maybe be on the table first. But I don't know about both, and I would ask you who you would be willing to send out to match $45 million in salary for both. That's a pretty steep price tag.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. And this Jimmy Butler conversation has kind of allowed Warrior fans to think about it. But to me, I think if you look at Andrew Wiggins and the way he's playing this year and what he's done since he's been with the Warriors, and admittedly last year was a lousy year, but I am of the opinion that year was an outlier. And what we've got with Andrew Wiggins is what we've got. He's good value for his contract, and I don't want to trade him. But now, you look at what we're getting from Draymond Green, who up till we were talking about Jimmy Butler, no one was talking about trading him. Draymond Green doesn't really produce equal to the value of his contract. Now, there's games when he does, but across the season, I think you could argue that he doesn't really produce. Now,
okay,
we're coming up on a retirement ceremony here. Last time we had a retirement ceremony, the Warriors management came to this like fork in the road, and they made the right decision based on basketball reasons, that they had 2 guards that couldn't both handle the ball at the same time. They made the unpopular choice that was the right choice for basketball reasons. And we've reached 4 championships and multiple other finals appearances since they did it. Now, right now, we got 2 guys in Kuminga and Green that both play the same position in Kerr's mind. I think you could argue that it could work. But if they could get those 2 guys from Utah and get off Draymond's contract, and Utah could flip him to someone else.
But they'd have to. That was done,
They would. They'd have plenty of time to do it, plenty of time. But if they could get off of Draymond's contract and a couple other guys, doesn't really matter who, and get those 2 guys and use 1 first-round pick as the inducement to Utah. Now you're getting a lot of value out of letting that 1 pick go.
Okay. Ken, thank you. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. It's well laid out. It's a good plan. I like a good plan, even if I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm not in on the trade Draymond. And it's not even the trade Draymond part of it, which the Warriors are not going to be in on. It's more, I just don't think the two players that you're getting back are good enough. I don't think Sexton and Collins especially are good enough to where you're going to say, yeah, we're going to give up Draymond Green. And Steph doesn't want it and everything else. Ian in Livermore, our final call here on this Wednesday night. Before we dig into the chat, we'll pause here again, and then we'll do another sound. We'll do a little sounds at Dubs OT before we close this thing out. What's going on, Ian?
Not much. I was trying to follow up on the last point I made. He hit on 5 or 6 good points. Like I said, maybe you said I don't agree with everything you said. I think we do lack a punch, 1 through 6, but trading Wiggins, I mean, it has to be the right move.
Would you do it for Jimmy Butler?
Well, I guess it depends on what the rest of the package is.
No
is it
Kuminga.
A first-round pick? No Kuminga.
No Kuminga. I don't even, to be honest, I don't even think it's my sense is, and I could be proven wrong, Ian, my sense is the only way the Warriors would consider it would be if it's basically Wiggins, GP, and like Looney, 2 expirings or Schroeder even, and GP, so, and you keep Looney, but
I hate to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead.
You saw what Looney did tonight. You saw what GP2 did tonight. Those guys still have the championship DNA that that's
what makes
proven.
It tough.
So I have a question for you. When you talk expiring contracts, does that mean we can't use that in salary cap next year if those guys walk because we're over the luxury tax, or can we sign a free agent with their money if we don't trade them?
You have to be under the cap. You have to be under the cap with those deals. When those deals go away, other players who may be getting raises can impact what's remaining of the cap. So it's not slotted. It's not Looney goes away, you have $8 million to spend. Peyton goes away, you have $9 million to spend. You have to take that $17 million, and based on everything else that you have, which is Steph Curry's number going up, it's Draymond's number, it's Wiggins' number, it's everybody else's number. You have to be under the cap with the ability to spend that. So it's not like you would necessarily have that money to be able to spend straight up.
And to me, I think someone like Vucevic or, someone we can pick up for less assets would probably be a better deal for now. Unless the Butler deal is sweet for us, why are we going to go all in? I understand, we got Steph. We have
Oh, did we lose you? Okay. Well, all right. Appreciate you, Ian. Here's what I will say, and I'm going to use this year as an example. The NBA salary cap is $140 million, $140.5 million. That's the NBA salary cap for this season. I'm going to pause here to finish my beer so I can hand my empty glass to Mike because we like to do that. 140.5, Kyle, and I'm going to bring you in here because I'm going to be kind of going back and forth between screens. Looking at the Warriors' salaries for next year, right now they have 151 on the books. So, and that's even with Peyton, Schroeder, and Looney coming off. The Warriors are over the cap. So the Warriors could lose Peyton, could lose Looney, could lose Dennis Schroeder, and they still have more money accounted for next year than the cap. Now, the cap will go up from 140.5, but it's not going to go up. Even if it went up $12 million, you got to be under that new number by however amount you want to spend. So you'd have to be, to get anybody of consequence, you'd have to be 10, 15, 20 million under that new number, which basically means to do that, you'd have to clear $30, $40 million more minimum. So That's even with those guys going away. So, no, you can't spend any of that money in terms of the salary slots. It's basically use it or lose it as it relates to Looney and GP2. And here's the other part of this, Kyle. You could trade Kevon Looney and then go re-sign Kevon Looney for a minimum deal in the summer. You could do the same thing with GP2. And again, would they be more or less willing to do that? I wouldn't be surprised in the least if Kevon Looney were traded and then still came back, because the Warriors basically did him a solid this year by picking up $5 extra million to keep him around that they didn't have to, and probably, to be perfectly honest, probably shouldn't have. As much as impactful, Kyle, as Looney has been at different points.
I think the Warriors like Kevon Looney. I think Kevon Looney likes the Warriors, and I don't know what Kevon Looney's value is to other teams, but I can't imagine it be that much more than the league minimum. Well, I think he's like a $2 to $3 mil kind of player.
Yeah, I think he's a minimum player now.
Yeah,
I think he's a minimum player moving forward. But a guy that any winning team, I was telling a few people during the game tonight, any winning team, any team with a title aspiration, I feel like would love to have him as a backup. But that's really the stage that he's at in his career, I think, in terms of salary and the like. Even still as a relatively young player, I think his birthday's coming up. The Warriors have a ton of February birthdays coming up here. And so I think his birthday's coming up in the next week, actually. And I think he's still only going to be 29. I want to say 28 or 29 or 30, Kevon Looney. I don't even think it's 30 quite yet. I'm going to look it up because I have this. I tend to remember birthdays. So let's look up Kevon Looney. Kevon Looney. Kevon Looney, February 6th. So, next week, February 6th. So his birthday is on the trade deadline, Kyle. How about that? Kevon Looney's birthday is on trade.
Happy birthday.
On trade deadline. Kevon Looney's 29th birthday is on trade deadline day. Happy birthday, my friend, and you're going to Chicago. No. Happy birthday, and you're – but the good news is, Kevon, they're going to buy you out, and then you can go to Boston. I don't know. I'm just OKC. Wherever you can go wherever you want. Minnesota,
Utah,
Milwaukee. Kevon's from Milwaukee. Maybe he'll go to Milwaukee. He's from Milwaukee. Maybe that'll be an easy transition. He can be a backup big for the Bucks, and they'll have some kind of a playoff run in. But Looney's birthday, 29 next week for Kevon Looney. All right, let's. You know what? I want to get to a couple of chats here. Then we'll take a break. We'll come back. Enrique Rivera, wow, legitimately surprised. Robert, OKC hasn't been playing great the last couple weeks. A lot of people legitimately surprised. Mickey D, best game of the season. Diggum 117. Honestly, can't figure this team out. Estimated eyes, hell of an effort. Rockin' New Era 84. Winner. Estimated eyes, OKC doesn't always show. That's true. They don't. FL Dubs fan, Warriors suddenly remembered how to play basketball. Almost all contributed, and Wiggins was outstanding. Two best players in this game, Wiggins and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, both Canadian. Very exciting to watch for a change. Alpha, great win, JD. Warriors appear to have some life. Let's not bury the lead. The Warriors do appear to have some life. As much as we were about to write them off if they had lost last night or had lost to Chicago last week or lost to Minnesota a couple weeks ago after they had gotten beat in Toronto, you get to one over, all of a sudden you have a little life. You do. You have a little life. Warriors have a little life. AJ Cruz, we got it, JD. Fired up. Jalen Williams had a bad game. He's usually better than that. Yeah, he did. He had a good fourth quarter, but he had a bad game. I think not much doubt about it. Max Lopez, the Warriors need Giannis. Rick Lemke, beautiful, beautiful basketball. Yeah, the Warriors for the last three, beautiful basketball. Rick also checking in with something that I mentioned earlier, tied with the Kings again. Yeah, the Kings for all the great play of the month of January. They got beat tonight by Philly, and Philly basically only had Tyrese Maxey going. That same Philly squad that beat the Lakers last night beat the Kings tonight in Philly, and so they've lost 3 of 4. Their next games, as I mentioned, OKC goes home, doesn't play until Saturday. They play at home against the Kings. Both teams have the next 2 days off, and then the Kings go to play in Minnesota. The Kings, like the Warriors, won their first game in Minnesota, even when they weren't playing well early in the year. So we'll see. But the Timberwolves have been playing a little bit better. They won in Phoenix tonight. And did you see Chris Finch get ejected, by the way? That was wild. Kyle, did you see that? Did you see Chris Finch get ejected?
I saw the clip. I don't know what happened, but it sounded like he shouldn't have got ejected.
Well, I think there's there was actually a pool report where somebody will go in and interview the official after. There was a pool report on what happened, and basically the crew chief of the officials said, so Bradley Beal's waiting to inbound the ball right next to Chris Finch, and I guess Chris Finch said something to Bradley Beal, like, I don't know, kind of snarky, maybe with some foul language, like just kind of maybe making a joke.
Hey, man, you have the worst contract in the NBA.
You know, something, whatever. And Bradley Beal's just waiting to get the ball from the ref to throw it in. And the ref kind of scolds Chris Finch, like almost gives him a warning. And Finch is like, he looks at Bradley Beal and kind of points. I was talking to him, meaning Bradley Beal, and not the official. And so the official's like, all right, cool, game on. He goes to hand the ball to Bradley Beal, and and it was so quick. It was like a split second. Finch mumbled something real quick under his breath, and the ref just, boop, see ya. And then Chris Finch lost his mind. So I don't know whether Finch thought he could get a little shot in or what was going. It was awesome. It was actually, it was. I don't know. I'm a sicko. Everybody who watches this show knows I'm a sicko. Listens to this show knows I'm a sicko. I thought it was actually one of my favorite sequences of the whole season. It's like, what is going on here? And anyway, I don't know. It was hilarious. It was up there with Michael Malone, no class, no balls. But anyway, I don't know what was going on there. There was a pool report. I was reading it, but if you didn't see the video, it went viral. One of the stories of the night, but the Timberwolves, just a classic, like, I wasn't talking to you, I was talking to him. Like, and he's just, some vulgarity came out of his mouth about something. He might have really been talking about the official and tried to play it off. Like, no, and then said something again. The ref was like, get out of here. You're done. Hit the pike. Anyway, it was funny moment. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back, more from the chat, and then a quick edition of Sounds of Dubs OT and some fun with numbers. Warriors win 116-109 over the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll be back right here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
KNBR presents the sounds of Dubs OT.
I can see the headline now. Kerr says Warriors better without Curry.
No class, no balls.
I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court.
Now here's John Dickinson.
All right, final segment. Sounds of Dubs OT. The Jimmy Butler gets me every time. Well, he's probably not going to be in Miami a week from tomorrow. All right, let's get to it. We'll do our Sounds of Dubs OT. We'll get a few chats, and then we will also have some fun with numbers here and make sure we play enough commercials before midnight that we don't get Kyle Haar in trouble. Because apparently we started late tonight, and we've had some longer segments. So Kyle's stressing a little bit that we're going to make sure we get all the commercials in. Kyle, we good? We good?
We're
sure?
We're good. We've had great conversation all night, so
it's been a great conversation the whole night. We appreciate it, and Kyle, I appreciate you. But Kyle, like, to let everybody in on the chat, and I see Uncle Looney and Ian J and Otis Bird and Robert. Kyle really took me. He's like, JD, like, bro, like, seriously, I need you to. We got to hit this time. We got to play these spots, or nobody's gonna be working tomorrow.
Yeah. It was a combination of different things. I mean, the Warriors winning, the game going long, the conversation, but then and then I look up, I'm like, oh wait, it's like close to 11:40, and we still have like 10 minutes of spots.
Kyle's like, oh my god, I got a half hour worth of commercials to play. Like, we get like, what happened? Anyway, we're gonna be quick. And fast, but not in a hurry here as we wrap things up. From Harmonic and Thrive City, the party's still going here. This might be the latest the party has gone at Harmonic and Thrive City. So cheers to you, Kyle. Cheers to Mike and Julia and everybody still hanging out here. I wonder if we'll get a late Austin Scott appearance tonight. He's working hard in the building behind me in the post-game press conferences. All right, so let's get to our Sounds of Dubs OT. Warriors get the win. Couple from Steve Kerr, couple from Steph Curry. First and foremost, the head coach of the Warriors. How much did the Dubs need a win like this win tonight?
I think this group, we know they're capable. You know, what we saw early in the year was not a mirage. You don't just fall into that. But watching the tape of the OKC game that we played on the road early in the season when we were rolling, you could just see a bounce in our step. There was a look in our eye, and I didn't see that tonight early in the game. We've struggled to play with that bounce and that confidence here the last month or so. So it's great to see us fight through that and then kind of reach that state in the second half where, like, you could see the belief, you could see the energy, and felt like we captured that again. And now we got to sustain it, obviously.
Yeah, and we'll see. And the next test is the Phoenix Suns on Friday at Chase, and then Orlando, and then they're going to go out on the road. But, yeah, they looked like a defeated team in the first quarter that basically thought, like everybody in Chase Center and most people watching at home, that the Warriors didn't have a chance tonight. Andis Brown in the chat. Warriors match up well against OKC. Good to see you, Andis, in the chat. Even though SGA went nuts, he did slow down some of the second half. Yes, he did. He does get fatigued. The Thunder do ride him a lot, and other guys really were not in rhythm. Jalen Williams had a big fourth quarter, as we talked about. Isaiah Joe was really the only shooter that was in rhythm throughout the game. And even Williams didn't play all that well up until the fourth quarter. So it was SGA and then not a whole lot else. And I think when you look at the Warriors tend to defend well against those types of teams that are heavy isolation, heavy one-man show dependent. And I thought when the Warriors made their run in the second quarter, they weren't making threes. Kerr was searching for answers. Wiggins started to get going in that second quarter. Kyle Anderson came in and played a little center. Kevon Looney came in. I thought it was Anderson and Looney and Wiggins in that second quarter that gave the Warriors life. And even though they were down 10 at the half, there was a confidence that grew from it that carried over into that second half, which allowed the Warriors to get the game tied. And we know, Kyle, you got to get the game tied by the end of the third quarter or be ahead. Otherwise, the Warriors don't win. 1-20 when trailing after three quarters. they got it tied, which meant they had a chance to win. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. Eddie checking in here out at Harmonic. When the owner of the joint stops by, you pause mid thought and give him a fist bump and make sure he has a good night. And we certainly appreciate everybody here at Harmonic Brewing in Thrive City. All right, let's get to another clip. Kyle's going to start to get nervous here because I'm just talking and talking and talking. One more from Steve Kerr. GP2, big impact on the game tonight. Here was Steve's reaction to the night that Gary Payton had.
That's why Gary is so crucial to our team and to our success. I say it all the time, but the 22 finals shifted as soon as Gary got healthy after game one. We won 4 out of 5 games, and a huge part of that was his defense, his energy, his playmaking, screening. He's such a unique player. There's nobody like him in the league. He's basically a 6'2" power forward with jets in his feet and great feel too, like a really interesting feel. Not so much as a guard, but as a rolling big. So he creates an advantage for us defensively, but also a different look offensively with his diving and finishing. So Gary's huge for us, and when he plays like that, we're tough to beat.
All right, so that's Steve Kerr saying, don't trade him, don't trade him, don't trade him, don't trade him, don't trade him. You see how important he is. He's super important. Champion's blood, don't trade him, don't trade him, don't trade him, don't trade him. That was Steve Kerr sending a shot across the bow to the Warriors front office. Don't trade my guy, GP2. Don't trade him. All right, let's hear a couple from Steph Curry on the night as Steph ends up with some big shots made down the stretch in this one, and Steph addressed the reasons why getting this one was so important.
I mean, it was important, obviously, for 2 reasons. The competition you're playing, the team that's at the top of the conference, and just for us to be able to put 2 games together in a row. We need positive vibes around here, and we need wins, and it was a lot of contributions across the floor. It's funny because, we're still in that kind of position where every night you don't know who the combination that's going to work, but as long as everybody's committed to it, playing with high energy, starring in your role, you hope that you get rewarded for that, and it was definitely a night like that tonight.
Yeah, the Warriors did get rewarded for that, and we'll see if they can build on it. One more from Steph, real quick. Everybody's talking about the Gary Payton II exclamation point dunk. It was the lead-in to our show here tonight as we got things going. Here's Steph's take on GP putting this game out of reach.
Over the course of the last 4 years, there have been moments like that. He was definitely excited because he said he hadn't had one in a while. It doesn't matter at what point of the game it happens, it's always a big boost. Energy-wise, like demeanor for the whole team, to have something to celebrate, and for him to show his athleticism. But to finish the game like that was special. It's like you just want to be able to have a stamp on a game like that. And the crowd was going crazy. The whole bench was up like that. That's what a team, needs when you've had a run like we had. Not to overemphasize one play, but it's huge. It was a microcosm of our whole night.
Yeah, it really was. And the crowd was into it tonight. A little dead at the beginning. It's been a little dead at the beginning of late. But I think the Warrior fans truly appreciated the fight that the Warriors had in this game tonight. And as the game went on, it felt a little bit more like an older school Warriors crowd, which I think impacted the energy down the stretch as the Warriors looked to put the game away. So that sounds at Dubs OT. Let's wrap it up with some fun with numbers.
This is Dubs OT with JD. Time now for fun.
I'm a fun guy.
With numbers.
No, I'm just having fun.
On KNBR 104.5 and 680. Streaming live on KNBR.com and the KNBR app.
All right, Warriors 3 of 4 in the win column now, 24-23 overall, 14-12 at Chase Center, 3-1 on this 6-game homestand. A chance to make the homestand truly special if they can get the Phoenix and Orlando games, even one of them. Good homestand. You get both of them, it's a great homestand, with the one loss being the game going back to the Laker loss on Saturday night. Warriors have won 2 of 3 against OKC. including snapping a 3-game home losing streak to the Thunder. The Warriors win the season series against Oklahoma City, and they have won 4 of the last 5 season series, only last year going in Oklahoma City's favor. Warriors tonight winning against Utah. They swept the back-to-back. Second time the Warriors have swept the back-to-back this year, 4-4 in the second game of back-to-backs. The 28th different starting lineup for Golden State tonight. Steve Kerr joked before the game that he's trying to break the all-time record. The all-time record's 50, by the way, in 82 games, so the Warriors still have a ways to go. And the Warriors won when tied at the end of the third quarter, 1-20 when trailing. They got it to a tie. The Warriors got the win with the big fourth quarter. 29th clutch game. Dubs now 15-14 in the clutch games, and the Warriors came back from more than 10 points down. We're down 14 at the end of the first quarter. Second time in 2 nights that the Warriors have come from double digits down to win the game. We talked about Kevon Looney. Career high regular season for Looney. Scoring. Career high. Tying 18 points for Loon. He did have a 21-point playoff game against the Mavs in the conference finals in 2022. Steph, 21, moved into 27th place all-time on the NBA scoring list. He passed Ray Allen. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 52, tied for the most points scored in a loss to the Warriors with Elgin Baylor. You got to go back to 1961 to find the answer on that one. Big thanks to everybody in the YouTube chat. Big thanks to Kyle Haar. Big thanks to Overnight Dave and Greg Silver for joining us. We got Mike and Julia here at Harmonic Brewing. Who did I leave out? Kyle.
We had Jacob cutting sound for us. He was great.
Jacob Violante, always great. And always somebody who enjoyed sipping on a good cold one. So cheers to you, my friend, the great Jacob Violante. And we will talk to you Friday, right back here at Harmonic. Warriors and the Suns. Dubs get the win. We'll be all caught up on the trade deadline rumors and all of that. And we'll talk to you from Harmonic and Thrive City. Warriors win tonight, 116-109, right here. KNBR, the sports leader.
Just outside a minute to go. They'll play out this possession defensively. 7-point game. Schrader driving. Gives it up the paint. Oh, my goodness. The facial on Hartenstein.
Punctuation mark.
Emirates Cup or bust.
Oh, hell yeah.
First of all, you got to start off liking each other.
I'm super cereal.
Big fat dub.
Ain't nobody going to stop me.
I just wake up and I can shoot it no matter if I'm playing or not.
But great win.
Who are these guys?
I love you, JD. Bye, sugar.
I can see the headline now. Kerr says Warriors better without Curry.